I gave you access to all of my Aura data.
Yeah.
And you have a company that you've created, which generated a beautiful report. I'm just open sourcing my data here for you. Talk about the company, talk about my data, and talk about how the community can use it.
Yeah, so I think what I've realized in working with concierge clients in my own sleep practice is these sort of wearables, they do a great job at sensing your data and then giving you the data in a UX. I think what my clients were saying is, I don't really understand what it means, and I don't understand what to do about it. So we ended up creating a new company out of necessity called Nightfall IQ. And it's a deep sleep analytics company. We'll inhale, we're device agnostic. If you scan the QR code, you will get taken to a special abundance page. We are currently oversubscribed in terms of waitlist, but you will get priority access if you just sign up to that, and you'll get 20% off. We have a couple of packages. But what we do is we ingest all of your data, and firstly, we will give you a...
And can we circulate this, this QR code through the app, and we'll put it up when later on we break for lunch so you can make sure to get the image?
Yeah, we will cycle around. So in fact, I'll show you, we ran Peter's data. Now, Peter, I know for a fact, because I've seen lots of his Aura Ring data on the screen, he is a stellar sleeper. This period of time actually spanned the LA fires. So obviously this is not representative. Yeah. Just keep in mind.
We were out of the home, in hotels, hotel, and out of my normal
I mean,
routine.
How the data is this good, it's surprising. But firstly, we start off with just a dashboard, a basic set of sleep metrics. We'll tell you how you're doing. Here, Peter, obviously, because of that situation, was a little down in terms of total sleep. Then we actually give you your different sleep scores in terms of the component constituents of sleep. He's doing an incredible job in terms of his deep sleep, even now. He's always been an exception to the rule, and I'll tell you why in just a second. His REM sleep numbers there were down a little bit, and we'll come back to that. This is great, but it doesn't really tell you, well, I got a 60 out of 100 for my REM sleep. Is that good? Is that bad for my age or sex? And because we've got millions of hours of sleep data at my center, we now have a referential range. So next we do how you stack up to your age and sex match norms. And here's how Peter's doing. He's right around the average for total amount of sleep. His deep sleep, we tried to do a chronological assessment. He's probably about 16 to 17 years in terms of his deep sleep, younger than his chronological age. I am desperately jealous and deeply envious. If he wasn't so nice, I would dislike him immensely. That said, though, when it came to REM sleep, we did see this deficiency. Now, REM sleep, when you are under conditions of stress, that is the first thing to go. And we could see it in his data here relative to age and sex match norms. His sleep latency, perfect. We don't like to see you fall asleep too quickly or take too long. In terms of the amount of wake after sleep onset, what we call WASO, this was higher. No wonder it was during that time period. Finally, his sleep efficiency is fantastic. As long as you're above 85% or higher, we like to see that. The next thing that we have is because Peter has now got so much data, we can actually look iteratively, time after time, unique date time stamp, and we can ask, okay, based on the data, what are the trends that we're seeing here? Firstly, we saw, because of that situation that he was facing, a huge amount of fluctuation that we wanted to bend those sinusoidal waves of high fluctuations down flat. Some areas he was doing great. How his heart rate stayed this stable across that time period, I do not know. But you need to interview him and ask whatever he's doing to keep his stress under conditions. That's impressive. What's more interesting is that in the analytics report that you get, now we ask something very interesting. We can ask, what are the trends that we're seeing over the past year? We saw something interesting in Peter's data. We saw that over really about the past 6 or 8, 9 months, there was an increase in his heart rate variability. This is a very beneficial sign. It's up a little bit over 27%. We'll speak offline at some point in terms of finding out what the inflection moment was, but this is the power of
Mona and Helen telling me to do high interval training and take my Zoom calls on my bike.
Isn't that impressive? Where finally, because you don't get to see that with your wearable classically, but here is the data that now remotivates a commitment to that change that you made. The next thing that we really ask is fascinating. Because we've got high fidelity data, we can now cluster it with our AI analyses and say, what is predicting your best nights of sleep? And what's predicting your worst nights of sleep? And what's stunning is that it's different for different people.
Wow.
And what we found is that when Peter had a lower heart rate and higher heart rate variability in the last few hours before bed, when he was well de-stressed, as it were, he had significantly more REM and significantly more deep sleep. We also found that when he had early and consistent bedtimes, he fell asleep faster and he slept for significantly longer amounts of time. The next thing we looked at was...
And by the way, it's interesting, when coming into the summit, there were a number of times where I literally was going to sleep at 8:30 so I could wake up before the family and get work done at 4:30 or 5. Those were my best sleep scores.
Yeah.
Earlier
because of that earlier. And what it's telling us is that you are sleeping more in harmony with what we call your chronotype, which is morning type, evening type, or somewhere in between. We also looked at worst nights of sleep when all of a sudden things get irregular. He had worse quality of sleep, and we saw circadian rhythm abnormalities in things like his temperature. You don't want circadian rhythm abnormalities. Your body needs that 24-hour clock time for almost every enzymatic reaction. Later bedtimes just destroyed his deep sleep. It cut into that early night phase where we get most of our deep sleep. So what this teaches us is what we need to create as a prescription for Peter, where to lean into and where to stay away from. We also finally looked, by the way, we reversed that analysis, not just what predicts your best and worst nights of sleep, but after your best and worst nights of sleep, what are the consequences to you the next day? Best nights of sleep, he was about 8 to 9 more minutes involved in high intensity physical activity, and he had markedly lower biomarkers of stress. He had about 30 minutes less physiologically distressed biology during the following day. After his worst nights of sleep, he was largely immobile. He was much like an amoeba in terms of his activity. I'm just kidding you. And he also had a lower overall readiness. In other words, he was more fatigued. We offered, and I'll speed through these, lots of recommendations. We were really interested in focusing on his REM sleep, trying to improve that, to boost that.
And I have increased it since this report. I'm now getting an average.
I will show you the data, and we offered some recommendations, but there was a bonus. I told you that those DORA's drugs, the sort of Web 3.0, they're not just good to improve your total amount of sleep. They're also quite clever at increasing your REM sleep without decreasing your deep sleep. This was Peter's data I showed you before we'd run, when we'd first run his report. We then worked with Peter. We actually recommended one of these DORA's drugs. He started the DORA's the DORA's drug. And now we increased his total sleep time from about 7 hours up to almost 9 hours. But the amazing part was what he was able to accomplish with his REM sleep. You can see here that his REM sleep score shot up to 25% from 13.9%. So he was
super proud of that one.
So I think that a round of applause for this gentleman. I think that's immensely impressive.
By the way, let me hit on something that's important that you taught me, which is if you look at your sleep over the course of the night, typically your deep sleep comes first and your REM sleep comes in the second half or the last third. So if you cut off your sleep, right, if you get woken up at 4 o'clock and you stay awake, you've killed your REM.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the first recommendation was for Peter's REM sleep, where we were saying, try to sleep 20 minutes later into the morning. That's the REM-rich phase. And remember when we said he was going to bed late at night, it decimated his deep sleep, because deep sleep comes in the first half of the night. So if you shortchange in the first half of the night, you go to bed late, you're taking away from the finger buffet of feasting on deep sleep. Whereas if you sleep longer the next morning, you're going further into the REM sleep-rich phase, so you get more time at the REM sleep serving dish.
So I
analogy.
loved this and found it extraordinarily useful. I need to talk to my team at Fountain. We should make this part of our baseline. If you enjoyed this episode, I'm going to be releasing all of the talks, all the keynotes from the Abundance Summit exclusively on exponentialmastery.com. You can get on-demand access there. Go to exponentialmastery.com.